Hey everyone, before we dive into this gripping tale, please hit that subscribe button to join our community and stay updated with more thrilling stories. The conference room smelled of stale coffee and tension as I sat through another grueling company meeting. My tie felt too tight, my palms sweaty, as the CEO droned on about quarterly losses. I glanced around, noting the nervous faces of my colleagues. We all knew something was wrong. Money was disappearing, and no one could pinpoint why. I'd been with the company for 5 years, pouring my heart into every project. But today, the air felt heavier, like a storm was brewing. The CFO's eyes kept darting to me, and I couldn't shake the unease. When the meeting ended, my manager called me aside. His face was grim, and my stomach dropped. "We need to talk in private," he said, leading me to a small office. The door clicked shut, and I knew this wasn't about a promotion. He didn't waste time. "We're letting you go." My heart stopped. They thought I was the thief. I sat there, stunned, as he listed vague reasons, none of them true. I wasn't going down without a fight. I leaned forward, my voice steady despite the rage bubbling inside. "You're firing me based on what? Assumptions." My manager shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my gaze. He mumbled something about discrepancies in the accounts I'd worked on. I knew my work was clean, every number checked twice, every report flawless. Someone was setting me up, and I wasn't leaving until I proved it. I demanded to see the evidence. He slid a folder across the desk, filled with doctored spreadsheets. My name was plastered on them, but the numbers were wrong, off by thousands. I recognized the formatting. It wasn't mine. Someone had gone to great lengths to frame me. I asked for a meeting with the CFO. My manager hesitated, but I wasn't backing down. "If you're firing me, I deserve to know why," I said. He relented, and we scheduled it for the next morning. That night, I barely slept, my mind racing with possibilities. The next day, I walked into the CFO's office, my evidence in hand. I'd spent hours combing through old files, cross-referencing transactions. The forged spreadsheets didn't match my digital signature. I laid it all out, timestamps, metadata, everything. The CFO, a stern woman named Margaret, raised an eyebrow but listened. I could tell she wasn't convinced. Yet, I pointed out inconsistencies in the altered reports, showing how they'd been edited after my submissions. Her expression softened slightly, but she wasn't ready to admit they'd made a mistake. "If it wasn't you, then who?" she asked. I didn't have a name, yet, but I had a lead. A colleague, Tom, had been acting strange, always lingering near my desk. I mentioned his name, and Margaret's eyes narrowed. She jotted something down and told me to wait outside. The waiting was agony, but I wasn't leaving without answers. An hour later, Margaret called me back in, her face unreadable. She'd pulled Tom's access logs, and they showed unusual activity, late-night logins, unauthorized file changes. I felt a spark of hope, but I wasn't in the clear yet. She asked if I had any direct proof linking Tom to the theft. I didn't, but I had a hunch. Tom had been too quick to point fingers at me during the meeting, deflecting attention. I suggested they check his recent expenses, company credit card records, anything. Margaret nodded, her fingers tapping the desk. She called in the IT team to dig deeper. As I waited, I overheard whispers among my colleagues outside. They thought I was done for, but I wasn't giving up. The IT lead returned with a flash drive, his face pale. He'd found something, but he wouldn't say what. Margaret dismissed me again, promising a follow-up. I left her office, my heart pounding with anticipation. That evening, I got a call from HR. They wanted me in first thing tomorrow. No details, just a curt instruction to show up. I barely ate, my mind replaying every moment of the past week. Had I missed something? Was Tom really the culprit, or was I grasping at straws? I pulled out my laptop and dug into my own backups, searching for anything I'd overlooked. I found an email from Tom, sent months ago, asking for access to my reports. I'd brushed it off as routine, but now it felt sinister. I forwarded it to Margaret, hoping it would help. The next morning, I walked into the office, head high despite the stares. HR sat me down with Margaret and the CEO. The room was silent, the tension palpable. They'd reviewed the IT findings. Tom had been siphoning funds, covering his tracks with my credentials. I felt a wave of relief, but it wasn't over yet. The CEO apologized, a rare occurrence, but his words felt hollow. They offered to reinstate me, but I wasn't sure I wanted to stay. The betrayal stung. How could they think I'd steal after years of loyalty? I asked for time to think. They nodded, but I could see they were nervous. I had leverage now, and they knew it. I left the meeting and went straight to my desk, ignoring the whispers. I needed to confirm Tom's actions for myself. I accessed the shared drive, careful not to break protocol. There it was, a hidden folder with transaction logs, all pointing to Tom. He'd been sloppy, leaving traces of his tampering. I printed everything and handed it to HR. They were stunned, but I wasn't done. I wanted to know why Tom had targeted me. The truth was uglier than I expected. Tom had been jealous of my recent promotion. He'd wanted my role, my projects, my reputation. Framing me was his way of climbing the ladder. I learned this from a coworker who'd overheard him bragging at a bar. The pieces were falling into place, but the damage was done. My trust in the company was shattered. I met with Margaret again, laying out Tom's motive. She promised a full investigation, but I could see the fatigue in her eyes. This scandal could tank the company's reputation. I didn't care. I wanted justice. They suspended Tom that afternoon, pending a formal inquiry. I was cleared, but the victory felt hollow. My colleagues avoided me, unsure how to act. I spent the day tying up loose ends, unsure if I'd return. The weight of the past few days pressed down on me. The next morning, I got an email from the CEO. They were offering a raise and a public apology to keep me. I wasn't impressed. Money couldn't fix the distrust they'd shown. I started looking at job postings, weighing my options. Meanwhile, the investigation into Tom deepened. They found more evidence, bank transfers to an offshore account. He'd been stealing for months, using my name to cover his tracks. I felt sick, but also vindicated. I met with HR to discuss my reinstatement terms. I demanded transparency and a guarantee it wouldn't happen again. They agreed to review their auditing processes. It wasn't enough, but it was a start. I spent the rest of the day mentoring a junior colleague, trying to reclaim some normalcy. The office felt different now, tainted by what had happened. By the end of the week, Tom was gone, fired and facing charges. The company issued a memo, vaguely addressing the financial irregularities. My name was cleared, but the whispers didn't stop. I decided to stay, but only for now. I had bills to pay, and I wasn't ready to jump ship without a plan. I started documenting everything, protecting myself against future setups. My manager tried to act like nothing had happened, but I kept my distance. Trust was hard to rebuild. I focused on my work, rebuilding my reputation one project at a time. Colleagues started approaching me again, offering cautious apologies. I nodded, but I wasn't forgiving so easily. The experience had changed me, made me sharper, less naive. I wasn't the same person who'd walked into that meeting. A month later, the company held another meeting. This time, they acknowledged the theft publicly, without naming me or Tom. I sat in the back, arms crossed, watching the CEO spin the narrative. They promised better oversight, but I wasn't holding my breath. After the meeting, Margaret pulled me aside. She thanked me for my persistence, admitting they'd mishandled things. It was the closest I'd get to real accountability. I nodded, keeping my thoughts to myself. I was already planning my next move, A job offer had come through from a competitor. The pay was better, the culture more transparent. I hadn't decided yet, but the idea of a fresh start was tempting. For now, I'd play their game, but on my terms. The storm had passed, but I'd never forget how quickly they'd turned on me. The weeks that followed were a blur of routine. I buried myself in work, avoiding office politics. My colleagues' apologies grew more sincere, but I kept my guard up. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone else might have been involved. Tom wasn't smart enough to pull this off alone. I started digging again, discreetly. I checked email chains, looking for patterns. One name kept popping up: Lisa, a senior accountant. She'd been too quiet during the whole ordeal, never joining the whispers. I remembered her hovering near Tom's desk months ago, laughing at his jokes. It could have been nothing, but my gut said otherwise. I flagged her activity logs and sent them to IT, anonymously. I wasn't taking chances. If there was a bigger network, I'd find it. IT got back to me faster than I expected. Lisa's logs showed similar late-night activity as Tom's. I felt a chill. Had I been working alongside a conspiracy? I took my findings to Margaret, who looked exhausted but intrigued. She promised to escalate it, but I could tell she was wary of another scandal. I pushed her to act quickly. If Lisa was involved, she could be covering her tracks. Margaret agreed to a discreet audit of Lisa's accounts. I waited, checking my email obsessively for updates. Meanwhile, I kept up appearances at work, smiling through meetings. No one suspected I was still investigating. The office had settled into an uneasy calm, but I knew it wouldn't last. I was ready for whatever came next. My instincts had been right about Tom, and I trusted them now. A week later, Margaret called me into her office. The audit had uncovered discrepancies in Lisa's reports, too. She'd been funneling small amounts to the same offshore account as Tom. They were working together, splitting the profits. I felt a mix of triumph and disgust. How many others were involved? Margaret assured me they were digging deeper, but I wasn't satisfied. I asked for access to the audit data myself. She hesitated, citing protocol, but I pressed. I was almost fired over this, I reminded her. She relented, giving me limited access. I spent hours poring over the numbers, connecting dots. Lisa had been careful, but not careful enough. I found a trail of encrypted emails between her and Tom. I handed them over, knowing this was bigger than I'd thought. The company brought in an external auditor to avoid bias. I met with them, sharing everything I'd found. They were impressed, even offering me a consulting gig on the side. I declined. I wasn't here to profit off the mess. I just wanted the truth. The auditors confirmed Lisa's involvement, and she was suspended that day. The office buzzed with shock, but I stayed quiet. I didn't need the spotlight. My focus was on protecting myself and ensuring this couldn't happen again. I started drafting a proposal for better internal controls. If the company wanted me to stay, they'd have to listen. I presented it to Margaret, who promised to take it to the board. For the first time, I felt like I had some control. But I wasn't naive anymore. Lisa's suspension hit the company hard. Morale was low, and trust was non-existent. I overheard colleagues speculating about who else might be involved. I kept my head down, focusing on my proposal. The board approved some of my suggestions, like stricter access controls and regular audits. It wasn't everything I wanted, but it was progress. I started training my team on the new protocols, emphasizing transparency. Some resisted, but I didn't care. I wasn't here to make friends. I was here to do my job. Outside of work, I was still weighing the competitor's offer. It was tempting, but I wasn't ready to decide. The company owed me, and I wasn't leaving until I felt justice was served. Every night, I checked my backups, ensuring I had everything documented. By the third month, the company was stabilizing. The auditors had cleared everyone else, and the theft seemed limited to Tom and Lisa. I wasn't convinced, but I had no proof otherwise. I kept my eyes open, trusting no one. My colleagues started treating me with a mix of respect and fear. I'd exposed 2 thieves. Nobody wanted to cross me. I used that to my advantage, pushing for more changes. The CEO invited me to a strategy meeting, a first for me. They wanted my input on rebuilding trust. I was blunt. Start with honesty. They nodded, but I could see the discomfort in their eyes. I didn't care. I was done playing nice. The job offer from the competitor was still on the table, and I was leaning toward it. That afternoon, I found an anonymous note on my desk. It was a single line, "Check the vendor contracts." My pulse quickened. Was this another lead, or a trap? I didn't tell anyone, not even Margaret. I pulled up the vendor files, cross-referencing payments with invoices. Sure enough, there were irregularities, small overpayments to a vendor I'd never heard of. I traced the company to a shell corporation, the kind used to hide money. This wasn't Tom or Lisa's work, it was too sophisticated. I sent the info to the auditors, keeping my name out of it. I didn't want to be a target again. The office was quiet that day, but I felt the storm brewing again. I was in too deep to stop now. The auditors moved fast. The vendor was a front, linked to a senior VP who'd been with the company for decades. I was stunned. This went higher than I'd imagined. The VP was placed on leave, and the company went into damage control. I stayed out of it, letting the auditors do their job. My proposal for internal controls was fully implemented, and I got a quiet nod of approval from Margaret. She knew I'd been the one to tip them off. I didn't want thanks. I wanted results. The office was a ghost town, with everyone on edge. I kept working, but my mind was elsewhere. The competitor's offer was looking better every day. I started drafting my resignation letter, just in case. I wasn't sure I could stay in a place so rotten. The VP's leave turned into a resignation, and the company settled with him quietly. I was furious. No charges, no accountability. Margaret explained it was to avoid bad press, but I didn't buy it. I confronted her, demanding to know why they protected him. She admitted the board wanted to move on. I saw red. This wasn't justice. It was a cover-up. I told her I was considering leaving. Her face fell, but she asked me to stay, promising more changes. I wasn't convinced, but I agreed to give it a month. I spent that time training my team, ensuring they could carry on without me. I also kept digging, just in case. The anonymous note had opened my eyes. There were still secrets here, and I wasn't done uncovering them. My last day of the month was quiet. I'd made my decision. I was leaving. The competitor's offer was solid, and their culture seemed better. I met with the CEO one last time, laying out my reasons. He tried to counteroffer, but I was done. I handed in my resignation, effective immediately. Walking out of the office felt like shedding a weight. I'd exposed 3 thieves, forced real change, and reclaimed my reputation. But the cost was high. I'd lost my faith in corporate loyalty. My colleagues threw me a small goodbye party, but I kept it brief. I didn't need their approval anymore. As I packed my desk, I found another anonymous note, "You did good." I smiled, tucking it away. Maybe I'd made a difference after all. Block 3. My first week at the new company was a breath of fresh air. The team was collaborative, the systems transparent. I threw myself into my new role, grateful for a clean slate. But I couldn't fully let go of what happened. I kept in touch with a few old colleagues, checking on the changes I'd pushed for. They told me the company was still reeling, but the new controls were working. I felt a pang of pride, but also relief that I'd left. My old office was a minefield, and I was better off out of it. At night, I started writing about my experience, turning it into a blog. I wanted others to know how to protect themselves. The response was overwhelming. People shared their own stories of betrayal. I realized my fight wasn't just mine. The blog gained traction, and soon I was getting messages from others in similar situations. They wanted advice, strategies to fight back. I started a small consulting side gig, helping employees navigate corporate setups. It wasn't about money, it was about empowerment. I used my story to teach others how to spot red flags, document everything, and demand transparency. My old company reached out, asking me to consult on their new systems. I declined. I wasn't going back, not even for a paycheck. My new job was challenging but fulfilling, and I was building a reputation as someone who didn't back down. I kept the anonymous notes as a reminder of what I'd overcome. They sat on my desk, next to my laptop, fueling my drive. A month into my new job, I got an email from Margaret. The company had settled with another employee who'd been framed, just like me. They'd used my protocols to catch it early. I felt a mix of validation and frustration. Why hadn't they listened sooner? I replied, wishing her well but keeping it short. I was done with that chapter. My blog was now a platform for corporate accountability, and I was speaking at a small conference soon. I prepared my talk, focusing on resilience and vigilance. My new colleagues supported me, some even attending the event. I was nervous but ready. Standing up to my old company had changed me, and I wanted others to feel that strength. The conference was a turning point. I was no longer just a victim. The conference went better than I expected. People approached me afterward, sharing their stories. I realized how common corporate betrayal was. I started a newsletter, expanding my blog's reach. Each week, I shared tips on protecting yourself in toxic workplaces. My new job gave me the flexibility to pursue this passion, and my boss even encouraged it. I was finding my purpose, turning pain into power. I still checked in with my old colleagues, who said the office was slowly improving. The new controls were catching discrepancies early, and morale was creeping up. I was glad, but I didn't miss it. My life was fuller now, with a clear mission. I was helping others avoid what I'd been through, and it felt right. 6 months later, I got a call from a lawyer. My old company was facing a class action lawsuit from former employees. They'd uncovered more fraud, linked to another executive. I wasn't surprised, but I was done being involved. I referred the lawyer to my blog, where I documented everything. My story was out there, helping others build their cases. I focused on my new role, where I'd been promoted to lead a small team. My leadership style was different now, transparent, direct, and protective. I made sure my team knew I had their backs. At home, I kept writing, my newsletter growing steadily. I was invited to speak at another conference, this time bigger. I accepted, ready to share my story with a wider audience. The second conference was a game changer. I met whistleblowers, lawyers, and HR experts, all fighting for workplace justice. We formed a network, sharing resources and strategies. I felt like I was part of something bigger. My blog evolved into a full website, with guest posts from others who'd fought back. I was still working my day job, but this was my calling. My old company's lawsuit made headlines, and I got calls from reporters. I declined interviews, letting my website speak for itself. I didn't need the spotlight. I needed change. My new team respected my side work, and I was thriving. I framed the anonymous notes, hanging them in my home office. They were a reminder of how far I'd come. A year after leaving, I got an unexpected package. It was from an old colleague, containing a company award I'd never received. It was for integrity, dated the day I'd resigned. I laughed. It was too little, too late. I donated it to a local charity, letting go of the last tie to that place. My website was now a go-to resource for corporate accountability, and I was mentoring young professionals on the side. My new job had me leading bigger projects, and I was good at it. I'd learned to trust my instincts, honed by betrayal. I still got messages from readers, thanking me for giving them courage. Each one felt like a small victory. I was building something meaningful, piece by piece. My second year at the new company was my best yet. I was promoted again, now overseeing an entire department. My team trusted me, and I made sure they felt safe. My website had grown into a community, with forums and webinars. I was invited to write a book, a guide for navigating corporate traps. I started outlining it, pouring my experience into every chapter. My old company was a distant memory, but its lessons stayed with me. I checked in with Margaret one last time. She'd left, too, starting her own firm. We laughed about how we'd both escaped. I wished her luck, meaning it. My life was full: work, advocacy, and a sense of purpose. I'd turned betrayal into strength, and I wasn't stopping. The book deal came through, and I spent months writing. It was cathartic, reliving the ordeal but framing it as a triumph. I included stories from others, making it a collective voice. When it was published, it hit the shelves with a small but dedicated following. My conferences were now packed, and I was a regular speaker on workplace ethics. My day job was still my anchor, but my advocacy work gave me wings. I mentored more people, helping them fight their own battles. The anonymous notes stayed on my wall, a symbol of resilience. I was no longer defined by what happened. I defined myself. My old company was rebuilding, but I didn't care. I'd built something better. Looking back, I'm grateful for the ordeal. It broke me, but it also made me. I'm a leader, an advocate, and a voice for those who've been wronged. My book is in its second printing, and my website is a lifeline for thousands. I still work my day job, but my heart is in helping others. I've learned that justice isn't given, it's taken. I took mine, and I'm teaching others to do the same. The corporate world is messy, but I'm proof you can fight back and win. I don't know who left those anonymous notes, but I owe them. They pushed me to keep going, to uncover the truth. I'm not done yet. There's more to change, more to fight for. And I'm ready. Thanks for joining me on this journey. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel for more stories of resilience and justice. Your support keeps this community growing.